So, good morning, Zach. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning,
Let's
Yuvraj.
let's begin with our first question. So, why don't you tell us a bit about your journey from becoming a stage actor at Prithvi Theatre and doing Baghdad Wedding, touring India? Why don't you tell us a bit about your journey through Bombay into India?
Sure. I came to India. I came to India not really to act, uh, but in a strange kind of twist of fate. I studied acting formally. So, like, I went to one of the best acting schools in America, Stella Adler, and then I went for my MFA, Master's Postgraduate degree in directing. I did the acting course and then a training in acting in America in order to become a better director. And as fate has it, sometimes you you train to be a director, and you take a little acting to become a director. And instead, my directing training has helped my acting because basically that's what I'm doing nowadays. So as I said, I came to India to direct. I had a project I was trying to get going. I was doing pre-production, all these kind of things. And I went as an audience member to go see a play at Prithvi Theater. And the director of that play told me the story later. So that's how I know what happened. He's the director, and he's sitting backstage, and he's watching the audience watch his play. So he's like backstage, just checking how is it going, right? The play is going on. How is the audience reacting to it? He's watching it, and I think he saw me, like the light bounced off my head or something. He saw me in the audience, and he goes, "Oh!" And he turns to the guy next to him. And he goes, "Who just happens to know me?" And he goes, "Oh, who's that guy? I need an evil white guy for my next play." And that guy, Hidayat, said to Akash, the director, he said, "Oh, that's Zach. Zach, you should talk to him." So I do the play just as a regular audience member, and I get mugged in the lobby by a most wonderful fellow. Akash Kuran has become an impresario of stage and film. But at that time, he was, kind of still struggling theater director. He had his theater company and all that. And he said, "Look, I'm doing a play. It's an ambitious project in which all the Indians will be playing Iraqis. And it's being set in Iraq, in Baghdad, for the most part. But we need one white guy. And we don't want to cast anything. We should get a white guy. And also, he's like an evil white guy." And that phrase, evil white guy, um, stuck because I ended up doing the play, and within like literally the first 5 minutes of my entrance on stage, I rape, I sodomize, I torture, I kill, and the audience, they had an image of me, right? So that was a wonderful experience, and again, I didn't come to do acting, but I thought something the way Akash was presenting it, but also I thought, I don't want to just be a foreigner who comes to India and makes a film, which all too often becomes like a touristy, or becomes, you see India through the foreign eyes, where everything is super colorful and super spicy and all, masala and all that. And I didn't want that. I wasn't going to do that anyway. But I thought, if I'm in somebody else's production, and particularly like theater, which is very, very on the ground, and you're taking a train and you're touring around India and you're presenting the play to different audiences. I just thought that was a beautiful way of kind of assimilating to like becoming not a filmmaker in India, but an artist uh, who works in India. Yeah, it's much more ingrained. So as I said, I did this very, very evil character. I was the American soldier who's in Baghdad doing some nonsense. But it left an impression. And for years later, I would get a phone call saying, "Hey, my roommate, his third assistant saw you in a play about 3 years ago. We have an evil white guy character. Can you come audition?" And I just thought that was, well, I thought it wasn't what I expected. It's not what I expected when I came to India. But I also thought, okay, if I could do one play like this, how much better to like start assimilating on the film front and TV front as well, and then eventually OTT. So assimilation began with theater, which is the best way. So your question was, how did my journey go from theater to film? Well, I started in America doing acting in film school, and I didn't do any acting and I didn't do any theater in America. but I got the opportunity here, and since then I've been doing I've done about a half dozen plays, and we toured, and we've taken productions to London. We're probably going to do a show a worldwide tour. So theater is now part of who I am, but it also launched a specific kind of persona or brand for me. The Gourash Titan, and I can't complain.
So through Baghdad Wedding, you went out, did a lot of shows all over India. So how was your experience with that?
Well, I would recommend that for any artist. I would recommend that for anybody because, I mean, even if maybe you're in college and you're going to be pursuing a degree in, I don't know, mathematics, and you're going to go to Google as a product engineer or something like that, there is something mind blowing, to use the expression, about taking the same text, the same production, which you rehearsed for months and months and months. So it's like clockwork. You have a 2-hour production, right? And this was a fairly big production. It was about almost a dozen, 15 actors. A little bit over 2 hours. Set in Baghdad and London, and contemporary, not political, but substantial themes. So you take a good, robust text with excellent cast. Really, I'm very pleased to work with all these people. And you play it in Hyderabad, and you play it in Chennai, and you play it in Delhi, and the audience doesn't just have different reactions; they react at different spots. Like I can never forget, I was saying some line, and the audience laughed. In my head, as I'm still performing, but in my head, I'm going, "That's funny." Nobody else laughed at that moment, right? And every audience it doesn't remind me, it was specifically Hyderabad. Everybody in Hyderabad laughed at that one line. I said, "Oh, okay, I figured out how to make this line funny." And I think we then performed in Coimbatore next. Nobody laughed. Nobody. I even tried to make it funny. I tried to make it up. Not funny. I don't know. And to this day, I don't know what that is, but I'm grateful I experienced it because, when we talk about regional diversity in India, we understand it intellectually. I mean, as a foreigner, you understand intellectually. If you're here, you have your own kind of journey, sometimes from one state to another through different languages and all that. But nothing hits home like a joke works one place and it doesn't work somewhere else, and a non-joke gets a reaction like. And it just made regionalism very real for me. So it was a great experience. We ended up winning something called the Meta Award, which is like a national award. But I'll never forget that one moment in Hyderabad. I was eternally grateful for something profound out of that moment.
So let's talk about your journey between your acting school and getting into theater, the corporate side of your career that
Ah.
a lot of people don't know about. You were a finance guy, you know.
Well, yeah, no, it's a little strange because I first I started. I told you I neither did acting nor theater in America. I had my vision. I'll be the next Martin Scorsese, and I'll just be a film director. Um, uh, but at some point, I just needed to pay the rent. I just need to get a job. So after I finished my what you call postgraduate school, I then took about a year and a half off and was doing some kind of construction, homesteading work. Construction, not probably the way you think of it in like urban zone, but like out in the rural area where there's no electricity and you're kind of building things from scratch, which was a great experience. But I came back to LA and I just needed a job. My idea was I'm going to write screenplays at night. And again, I was not interested in acting at all. It didn't even occur to me, although I had done acting school and I had trained and I acted in my own short films in film school. It just didn't occur to me that I would do acting professionally. So I thought, okay, let me get a good corporate job, and then at night I'll work on my screenplay and like that. And I applied for something, and I have an MFA, so I wrote MFA on my CV. But the recruiter assumed that meant because what else could it be except for Master of Financial Analysis? And actually, it's Master of Fine Arts, right? It wasn't that I was lying. I didn't intend to see. I just didn't even occur to me that there is such a thing as Master of Financial Analysis. I never took a business accounting finance class in my life. And within about a minute of the interview, he knew. You could tell. But he also He knew I didn't deceive him, and he started to see things in me. And I'll tell you something. And I like to I don't want to say these comments specifically for arts people, but sometimes arts people can, particularly in India, because there's kind of a ranking system where, if you score high marks, then you're going to become a doctor, maybe a lawyer, maybe, but engineer. Oh, not so high marks. Okay, so now you're going to work in this zone. And if you didn't do well, then you'll move over into the arts. Okay, now you're in sociology or psychology and all that. And that is a very Indian kind of approach. When you have kind of a rote training and you have an objective scoring system where it's your worth is 88 marks, then I can understand that kind of, and it has some truth, right? In the sense that you score high marks, you have the intellectual stamina, integrity, and aptitude for, being a doctor is not a cakewalk. You've got to spend 7 years or so doing a lot of work. So I understand that. But I say this to all the artists who are insecure. The best business school I ever had, and I've hired and fired MBAs. The best business school I ever had was going to film school, and getting an arts degree. It was the best business school ever. And I'll tell you why. Because business school, although it's certainly useful, it's very specialized fields. If you want to do quant, there's going to be a PhD with econometrics after your name. If you want to do certain things in operational research, how many cans of Coke need to be delivered to Bangkok for these 2 weeks, given the past 50 years of time. Okay, so I understand there's role for very specialized knowledge. But in general, we're just talking about business. Film school is the best for this reason. You have an idea for something, and you have got to recruit and cajole and seduce and tempt and just round up the most motley group of people you can imagine. One person specializes in camera, and he's a little bit of a techie, maybe a nerd. He's a kind of an engineering mindset. Another person is an artist, and they're like diva, and they got ego. Another person's in sound, and he's in those headphones all day. And they're just very different personalities. And you got to round up all these different kinds of people and pull them together and say, I have a vision for something. Now I'm going to write it down, and we're going to call that a script. In business, you would call that a business plan, or maybe a blueprint or something like that. But here, now you see my plan, my script. Are we all on board this? And you will find, inevitably, everybody has a different idea of what that is. And your job as a director, producer, filmmaker, pull it together and to create something out of nothing. And not just something, but something that matched your vision. And in your heart, whether, even if it's successful, your original vision, whether you got it, you adapt. One day you're out shooting and now it's pouring rain. So what are you going to do? Well, same thing in business. You're out shooting and you're out in your production. The product is going to go live tomorrow, and your lead engineer gets hit by a car. What are you going to do? Okay, it's the same thing. So this skill set, but unlike business school, in business school where you do a lot of case studies and I don't want to say pretend work because I have respect for MBAs. I really am not trying to denigrate MBAs here. I'm just saying, in film school, it's literally every time you do a short film, you do 5 short films in the first semester. That's 5 startup businesses you had to do. 5. Boom. Next, we're doing a bigger project in the second semester. Now it's a bigger budget, it's a bigger scale. Again, boom, boom, doing 2 of those. By the end, you're doing a big project, which is, the number one risk factor for directors is heart attack. That's statistically the number one way directors and producers dies from heart attack because you're carrying a huge load in a short amount of time. You literally are trying to do. We're spending $1 million a day on a Hollywood movie. If a guy is 10 minutes late, I lost $10,000. There's a lot of pressure. That is business also. So it's the weirdest thing, but even though he said he saw that I had an MFA and mistook it, in that interview, he saw that I had those skills, and he pitched me. And honestly, even though I never formally trained, I ended up working at KPMG, and I got promoted every single year. And I became, after 6 years, a global product leader. I worked in 30 countries. I had teams working for me directly in 6, 7, 8 countries, and indirectly in about 20 countries. My clients were the Pentagon and central banks. First time I came to India was with a lecture for Securities and Exchange Board of India. You can learn things. And in our current world where AI is coming and the only thing is the ability to learn. Because 5 years from now, nobody knows what's going to be going on. The only thing that matters is, can you learn and adapt and adjust to that? So if you can learn, adapt, and adjust, then you'll find your way. So again, so I ended up doing business for a long time, and I came to India finally saying, I want to make my own movie. I was going to produce it and direct it. So that was a business and art combination. But that chapter of my life, I thank God for it. It's happened twice now. I studied acting to become a better director and ended up using directing to become a better actor. I studied directing, to become a better director, but I ended up using directing to become a businessman. You just don't know. At least I don't know.
Why don't you tell us a bit about your experience at Whistling Woods? You teach acting there, and how your experience has been. Also, how you think if the curriculum of theater that is being introduced in schools and institutions, and the future of theater.
Okay, that was a lot.
Yeah,
Right?
let's break it
I'll
up.
tell you. Okay, experience at Whistling Woods, the curriculum in general, and the future. Well, Whistling Woods is the largest film school in Mumbai, and I was invited by the head of the acting department, Urvazi. Urvazi ma'am had seen a short film of mine at a film festival. We got talking. She didn't know I was an actor, actually. Or maybe she did, but I'm not exactly sure. But she'd first seen my work as a director. And perhaps that was also another angle to it, that she didn't want to bring in somebody who was just an actor trainee, but somebody who has other experience. And because I'm foreigner, also has a variety of experiences. Let's put it that way. I said yes. I had done a number of guest lectures with the Whistling Woods, and now I'm visiting faculty, which means I have a course, and I'm teaching the master's degree batch in screen acting. But I said yes because I've come to a point in my life, or my acting career, so to speak, where I've learned a lot, and I feel the need to kind of, for myself, to kind of process what I've learned, like just to essentially just not lose. Like it's such a scattered industry, you're running around it, and I've got to that point where I've learned some things, I've observed something, I've got something. I want to sit for a moment, and I want to absorb it, and I want to process it for myself. And I found that in teaching, that gives me the space and the time to think about how I want to teach, at the same time process it for myself. So there's a quote I'm very fond of, which is, when one person teaches, two people learn, right? So the teacher is also learning in the process. I love it. It's been wonderful, and I've had the opportunity to teach before, and I've presented, and from the business side, I've presented at, I don't know, about 15 different universities around the world. So I've got teaching experience, but this was the right time for me. It was just that kind of spot where I want to do it, and the schedule worked out that I could continue working as an actor and develop my own projects. The question you asked was about curriculum. It is true that if you're a working actor, you, generally speaking, pull together many methods and find what works for you. And it's rare to find an acting school that says this is the way to do it and everybody else is nonsense. They may say this is the best way to do it, right? And the others are kind of nonsense. But everybody acknowledges that you're getting a little bit from this method and that method and this school and that school and this school and that school. So because I've trained both in the West and been here, I've been exposed to a lot, and I kind of pulled it all together in a kind of very, I think this is the proper use of the word, in a very secular way, right? I don't have a religious conviction about any one method. If there's some acting students or people who are interested in it, let's say, generally speaking, in the West, since Marlon Brando, since the 1960s, or perhaps really since Stanislavski, there's been an approach to go inside out, right? Which is to say, you find your motivation inside, you find your truth inside, you find the emotion inside, and that will dictate, or that will find its expression to some outward way of behavior. And not to overgeneralize, but to a large degree in the East, not just India, but in the East, there has been a kind of an outside-in approach, which is that this mudra, this Bharatanatyam, this kabuki, if you're in Japan, these kind of things are the physical expression of an inward emotion or rasa, navrasa kind of school of thinking. And neither is right or wrong. It's a funny thing because acting can be so subjective that you ultimately you have to bow down to what works. Because if you are okay, this is it. Well, that's great, but if it didn't work, then what? Then what? So it's a funny thing. Somebody gave me an analogy once. You can be a great artist, designing the most beautiful shoe in the history of the universe. But the shoe costs 20 lakhs. It's designed and boom, everything's broken. And you put it on the king's foot, and it doesn't fit. What's the point? What's the point? It's both. It's got to right. So you've got to do that. So the curriculum is, and with me, it's an adjustment and an amalgamation of different things. But that also mirrors what's happened specifically in Mumbai and perhaps in India broadly in the theater space and in the OTT space. Is that in really the last 10 years, 10, 15 years, the introduction of more Western trained actors, either foreigners who've come or Indians who've trained abroad and come back, has brought in a lot of new energy to the. Where's my light? Yeah, has brought in a lot of new energy into how to approach acting here. So somebody goes to La Coque in France and they learn a specific system, and they bring it back, and people go, "That's great. Those 10 things. We can use 2 of them," and that changes the Marathi or the Gujarati theater scene here without everybody having to go to France, right? So you have that migration system. But you also have OTT, which is to say Netflix and Amazon and Disney to a large extent have changed the way, not just actors, but changed the way audiences respond to stories and the way audiences interpret acting. You could even say the Indian audience has changed in what they call good acting over the years. I mean, that's true everywhere. There's some acting that we've, in a Hollywood movie from the 1970s, and now we go a little embarrassing. But at the time, people thought it was good, and so it's an interesting area because the performance was good, right? It was good. Yeah, we loved it. You got an Oscar. You look at it now and you go, eh. Well, geographically, that also happens. I mean, no disrespect at all, but some movies that happened in, let's say, Bollywood in the 1980s are over the top. And so much so that we love them for that. But if somebody did one of those performances in the middle of a, Vishal Bhardwaj movie, it would just be out of whack. So audiences can tell you that, not just the director and actors. Audiences go, that's too much, or that's a little whatever. So these global factors, migration, the cross-pollination of content, and also Indian content going abroad has effect there. But it's definitely true. If I have students who are roughly in the age of they're postgraduates, so they're a little bit older, but still early 20s. They grew up on, say, Friends or something like that. It definitely affects what they think is a good performance. So the curriculum is an evolving thing, and it's quite a complicated thing because you also I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but something like social media is the next thing. So I was talking about migration, people coming. That's say one wave of how things change, and there was things before that, of course. But OTT has been a major thing. But social media has really changed in the sense that, like, TikTok, or in India specifically, Instagram Reels. If you cannot create a performance which is GIFable, well, what's the point, right? So I cannot imagine Dilip Kumar in Devdas and taking, I can't imagine any 5 seconds of his and clipping it out and creating a GIF, and then judging his acting on that. It's incomprehensible. I mean, there might be a little segment where he gives a look or something, but for the most part, you would say that's insane. That is insane. But now, if you have a performance, like, we're looking for that GIFable moment, and if the person can do a GIFable thing, right? Oh, wow, good acting. So what we think of as acting and good acting is changing, and not. Maybe I'm a little old school here, but I would say not always for the better. It's a little tricky. It's tricky. So curriculum like that. So your last part was about the future. Sorry, did you mean just a clarification? Future of theater, or future of teaching, or future of film? The third part, I've spoken so long, I forgot your question.
How the theater culture in Bombay is evolving, how it was when you initially started, that's what I meant.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, as I said, these various factors have changed the theater scene in India. The migration of performers, the introduction of OTT, the audience is changing how they feel about acting, what is a good story, and all that stuff like that. But the economics has also changed. Before COVID, theater was in a tough spot because more and more people were going, instead of going out to a play this weekend, I'm going to binge watch season one of something. And for, I don't know what the price on Z5 is these days, but probably for the price of one theater show, I can have a year-long subscription to Z5. So people went, there we go. So I would say, if I remember correctly, theater was kind of trying to find its way on the economics. Then a beautiful thing happened, COVID, in which everybody was devastated. I mean, I'm not taking pleasure in this. I'm just saying restaurants had it worse than anybody. Nobody can go out, nobody can eat. But of course, events, destination weddings, theater, plays, shows, music performance, all these were just devastating. And they had to figure out a way to adapt. And so what you saw during that period with theater in particular was something called Zoom theater. So I'm not sure that what we're doing right now is very good Zoom theater, but the concept is you and I are here, and then like another just light, another window would come in. There'd be a face here, and then there'd be one here, and then this person would take over the screen, and then this one come here, and then they would take over the screen and go here, and you could actually, it sounds complicated and it sounds artificial, but since we interact with the screen so much in our regular life, audiences actually, to some extent, were able to kind of really like adjust and go, I get it, I get it, I get it. This is fun. This is good. This is lively. This is new. And even some films were made that way. There was a Kerala movie. There was one in Silicon Valley where the whole movie kind of takes place through a person interacting on the screen as they're chasing things. So the screen became a big factor like that. But again, COVID ends and we go back to the actual reality of economics. And a great thing happens that people are now starved for live entertainment. Like, okay, we're sick of screen. No, Netflix still hire me. I mean, we still love you, but people wanted the real interact. They wanted to see. They even going to live, live movie cinema where you're watching a movie together was a pleasure. It was a joy. So theater has kind of gone through these stages on the economic side. Interestingly, there are more Indian productions going globally than I've ever seen. And this is the most important point, not just to the diaspora. So, if you had a successful Gujarati play 20 years ago, you might take it to 4 or 5 cities around the world where there was a strong Gujarati NRI population. And you didn't expect anybody except for the Gujaratis to come see that show. But now there are Indian productions which are, accessible to a wider audience for a lot of reasons. And we have a show, Disco Dancer, which, I mean, we're aiming to do 300 or 400 shows, and that's not the NRI audience. 300 to 400 shows around the world is, it is true. It's people who like Bollywood, because Disco Dancer is a masala Bollywood, movie, and it's that kind of movie, that kind of movie, that kind of production. But it's fun. We premiered it in London, and I don't know. I would say probably, if I had to guess, maybe a third of the audience was Indian, maybe half, but at least half were not Indian. They were curious, or they liked Bollywood, or they just heard those songs. Jimmy, Jimmy. Yeah, I'm not the singer, but you know what I'm saying, like that. So it's going both ways, and you'll have productions here like that. So I do think Indian theater is like Indian film. It will increasingly be an export industry. Not that its role in domestic will reduce, but the export side of it will only increase in the decades ahead. I'm ready to bet my life on that for sure, unless something bad happens.
So considering such diverse themes that exist within Indian cinema, considering all these regional films that come out, How do you contrast Indian cinema with global cinema?
Uh, Contrast is a tricky thing because every country and every culture expresses themselves, I mean, through the culture, through their art. So something as simple as if you give an American, a Frenchman, a Japanese person, and I don't know, I'll just take those three, you give them a simple exercise. A man sits down to enjoy his dinner. Well, I mean, I can already see, you know, the Japanese idea of perhaps, the most enjoyable dinner might be, say, I don't know, sushi off the top of my head, and the American might be, Big Mac and like this, and the French, so the cuisine is different. But that's not the interesting thing. How the person is eating, I already tell you, I can tell you, the American is going, it's a very American, it's an American look. American look, right? No French person would ever get no traffic like that. So the behaviors with people like that, but most importantly, in terms of the art, how it would be captured and presented, say on film, or even if it was a stage production, would be entirely different. Also, if you're familiar with Japanese cinemas, they can be explosively graphic, but often are very minimalistic, right? They're kind of extreme. So you might hear him drop silence as he's eating. It was most meticulous, right? And the filmmaking like that. So you already have the issue that every culture expresses art in its unique way. What's a little different about India is that you have Bharat, and then you have little Indias within India, right? And that's probably most akin to Europe. Because if I'm in America, you wouldn't really say, oh, he's a California filmmaker, and it's very different than a Texan filmmaker. It's very different from a filmmaker from China. Not really. American filmmakers have their genres. But in Europe, it is definitely true that the language difference, the culture difference between France and Germany and Portugal and Poland, all those things is much more similar to the Indian model. Like the model, you still have something that you would think of as European cinema. You still have something that is fundamentally Indian in its nature. But the regional expression of that can be just staggeringly diverse, which is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And I also think there is an interesting historical kind of pattern that it may be changing now, but in the past, the movies that worked, the Indian movies that worked abroad were not the ones that worked very well in India. That is to say, the hit movies of India, let's just say your Sholay, your Bollywood masala, and I'm talking Hindi cinema right now, but it's largely true with the other regions, those worked domestically. They pushed emotional buttons in the Indian domestic audience. But if I don't have those emotional buttons abroad, I don't get it. Okay, some guys are singing. It looks like fun. It's okay. It's okay. Sholay was not a worldwide hit. Or considered, it just wasn't accessible because it was doing something specifically that only Indians would hear. It was kind of a private language in that sense. The movies that did, and I mean pre-OGT, we're talking, say, the past 50, 60 years, the movies that did do well was when there was a kind of a cultural connection. So, Raj Kapoor would be successful in Russia because Russia and India, although they're different countries, they have some very similar values in some things. Or, again, take some of those movies from the, say, black and white area or something like that. People in Egypt go crazy over that because there's kind of cultural commonality, right? So you either had cultural commonality where the movies would work, or you had, and this is the most interesting thing, you had Indian movies that touched a universal. And those tended to be regional movies because the Hindi movies had enough of a box office support that they can just play Hindi song, dance, masala, run around the tree, and there was enough of a market for that why change? I mean, you would push the envelope. But a lot more experimentation happened with the regional cinemas. Probably, inarguably, the most famous of this would be Satyajit Ray in terms of his global acclaim. He became successful in India later, but if you put Sholay next to Patha Panchali, nobody's going to watch Patha Panchali in India. I mean, no disrespect. It's just Sholay is fun, you know. And so what happened though, and I don't want to take Pata Panchali as a good as the best example. What it did very well was it captured the essence of the Indian mood and moment, and was a real eye opener for people around the world. So that was wonderful in its way. But in general, you had even Tamil cinema that is just in me. It's just huge success in Japan because for example, a sense of dharma that might be riding through that movie, and in Japan they have a sense of honor code with Bushido or something like that, and they would get it, and the honor in the movie, the honor value system would hit more of a universal, and it wasn't that movie was going to indulge in playing for the masses here in India. It was kind of a true artist expression, trying to be as universal as it could and local and true. And then people understood around the world. So this is an amazing, and Hollywood has a phrase for this because they've seen this happen not just in India, but around the world. The more local, the more universal. If you try to make a universal movie by saying, I'm going to have one Chinese guy and one Indian guy and one German, and then we'll put them all together in a boat, it's kind of like tokenism. But if you have a small movie about a postman delivering mail to in Latin America to a guy who can't read, and the postman has to read the love letters to him, and it turns out that postman is actually a poet, but he's not successful, and he's learning about, and okay, that is a story which easily 5 billion people around the world can relate to. Yeah. And that's true in local, even though it's in Spanish language, that will play in, Bihar. It will. And the same thing has happened the reverse way. So you have you have what's naturally an evolution of cinema that originally it becomes little pockets. So you have a lot of pockets in India, to your question. You'd also have a sense of Indianness, especially with I would say Sholay is the first pan-Indian movie, but you have Triple R, you have kind of Bahubali, you have things which are increasingly pan-Indian movies. And it's not a contradiction. You can have, it still plays locally and it plays for all of India. But now you have the third level, which is that it can now also work on a global universal level. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And it's not just about film. You can see this even in cities. I've always marveled that a city like Bangalore, for example. Bangalore is hugely, and no disrespect to Bengaluru, I've lived in Bangalore for a year and a half. It's incredibly important regionally in terms of the regional capital Karnataka and generally like that. Not particularly influential in terms of national politics. I mean, yes, no disrespect to the MPs and MLAs, but it's a little underappreciated given how much it contributes. But an incredibly important city globally. So on these three levels, you have kind of local, regional, national, and you have international. You can have not just with movies, but even cities or cultures where they have some influence in kind of a regional thing, not particularly nationally. And then like that, you could say quite a number of Bengali movies, or Satyajit Ray even falls in that category. And then you have cities which are very important regionally, very important nationally, not much of a presence internationally. I don't know what's good, I don't want to. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail, whichever city I start talking about. But I think we understand the point I'm saying there, right? I think you don't need to hit all three. You just need to be true wherever you're playing the game, right? I don't want Kochi to lose its character in the process of becoming a global hub for the Indian Ocean. It's always been a hub, but I don't want it to lose its nature, its essence, its wonderful local relevance in the process of trying to become a global thing at the same time. And the same thing is true of film. I don't want small independent movies to lose their roots as they're trying to go out to the big festivals also.
So considering the massive population of India, how do you think it has affected Hollywood franchises of like Marvel or Disney coming into India?
That's an interesting question because I think we're at this moment, it's kind of changing a little bit. But, for the past 10, 15 years, Hollywood and really particularly the Disney and franchise films have been trying to get into India with a foothold. And, about I have to remember statistics, but I think about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, maybe say just 2010, Hollywood was 0.9%, just under 1% of Indian box office. Last time I checked, and it, there's COVID, so there's that and all that, but it's in the roughly 15% zone. Last time I checked, and that may fluctuate. There's some years Avengers comes out, it's a bigger play. Others years maybe less. I don't know things, but it's certainly gone, way more. And that was planned. It's to be expected, really. India itself is opening up to more kinds of entertainment. If somebody sees on Z5 or Geo is up, I think, doing a number of Hollywood productions now. They have a kind of an agreement. So you watch one Spider-Man movie, something there, or you're a hot star, you're watching it here, then you'll, oh yeah, I know what that character is. Let's go see it on the big screen. But so that was going to happen anyway, right? And but there are other factors, and the factors I'm about to mention, these are factors in which have given have allowed Hollywood or the Western cinema in general to have an increasing presence in India. The factors I'm about to mention have been one way, but they are just as likely to move into two-way and interactive. So what begins as import will increasingly turn into export also. So maybe as I'm saying these things, you might listen to that because it may sound like Hollywood is invading, the invaders are coming as usual. But it's an interesting thing. When the invader lays down a road so that they can bring in their tank, when the tank is gone, the road remains and you can go back on that road the other way. So this is a very interesting process of evolution, I would say, civilizational evolution. But specifically in the last 10 years, Hollywood has increasingly been on the small screens, right? Literally our phones, and changed what audiences want. But also visual effects has become a huge factor, not just for India, but in Hollywood itself. It's its own genre. What is called not just the Marvel superhero, but really even more essential, it's the spectacle film, right? So if you have a movie like Titanic, which was probably the best example of this, perhaps even to date, because it wasn't a franchise with known characters and superheroes. It was just spectacle. But every time I mention Titanic, and it was wildly, hugely successful here. I think at one point it was the one. It's changed now, but at the time it was like I think it was the top number 3 most successful. It was the 3rd most successful film in India of history in terms of box office, right? I mean, I think Sholay was still number 1. I don't remember the others, but for a foreign film to be number 3 in all-time history it was insane. When I mentioned that to Indians, they always say the same thing. Yeah, Zach, but Titanic was an Indian movie. And I go, well, that's interesting because it wasn't actually an Indian movie. They go, yes, it was. I go, okay. And what they mean is the values, the love story, the tragedy, the whole thing, it could have been done as an Indian movie. But what made it a really big global thing was spectacle. So what Hollywood has done well, and what audiences around the world still pay to go see, is to see something they've never seen before. The superhero model is sometimes interesting because of characters. So if you're familiar with the universe of superhero characters, somebody like Batman has a particularly interesting and deep psychological profile. So he has a kind of more nuanced character. But a lot of these characters are not that interesting. It's just that they do kind of really bang things and, wow, that was cool. And, particularly if you're a kid, seeing somebody jump off building and fly around, like, that's pretty cool. And if you can do that, not as a cartoon, but like photorealistically with visual effects, wow. And, I would say Indian cinema has been trying to do that and increasingly more successful. Bahubali, I think, had a lot of things going for it, but certainly the scale of the images had not been seen before. And the audiences were just like, the jaw was wow. And it was also, it's our images that are wow, like that. So the introduction of spectacle cinema at that level has, in this initial stage, has been, say, been primarily driven by Hollywood. The cost of technology, visual effects, is completely reducing. And there will be more and more Indian filmmakers that take that space and make the equivalent of a Sholay. That is to say, Hollywood cannot make Sholay because Hollywood doesn't understand intimately the buttons that push the Indian artist. It's got to be either somebody who lives here or is rooted in India very, very deeply. Right? It's not going to look like that. So those will come back. Now, the trick here is not to make just your Sholay, but to make your kind of movie, which then is Indian origin, but exported globally. So again, that wave is going this way. Spectacle movies have gone this way, and at some point they will go this way. And it's so predictable. There will be an Indian movie that is a huge box office hit in Nigeria sometime in the next 5 years because of spectacle. It will be doing what the Hollywood movies used to do. And now the next point is not just India is going to benefit from this, but Nigeria. There will be in the next 5 or 10 years a Nigerian movie, a Nigerian Bahubali or Nigerian Sholay or Nigerian Triple R, that even though you don't know anything about Nigeria, you here in India or you here in LA will go, wow, this was wow. And it's got to be universal, but it also be spectacle, and it will go over. And that's happening also, and it was never possible before for Nollywood, as it's called in Nigeria. But it will be possible, and it'll be a crowded movie space in the years to come, which is good.
So according to you, how is the evolution of storytelling in India being influenced by, advancements in technology like VFX, how do you see that?
Well, it's interesting because you asked the question, the advancement in storytelling. And, storytelling is ancient. You could even say it's eternal. It's kind of hardwired into our DNA. If you're of a spiritual bent of mind, you could even say the journey of a soul is a story. Whatever story is, it's not the same thing as a piece of tech, right? Tech advances, it develops. You have AI, which is a tremendously significant inflection point. But the advancement of storytelling, I'm not sure storytelling advanced, or it doesn't advance the same way. So I need to separate these two spaces, and we need to look at storytelling first by understanding that storytelling is very dependent on the audience. If I wanted to tell the story of what's a good example? A non-political example right now, but I just want to tell a simple. I wanted to tell the story of Dhirubhai Ambani. Okay, I wanted to tell his life story. I'm not going to do 2 hours. I just want to tell it in 2 or 3 minutes. Just tell me his story in a minute. Yeah. If I was doing that for, let's say, you, or for, say, a regular audience, that might look something like a trailer for a larger movie. Like you'd have the snippets of his life, and Abhishek Bachchan is there, and you'd have that. But if I was telling that same story, the same person, and I'm telling the same story, but I was telling it to a 5-year-old child, I would have to change the story because the child is not going to understand some of the financial maneuvers, and they don't care even, right? So the storytelling is in part related to your audience. And I don't want to use a controversial word here. I'm just saying that audiences are at different levels. And this is not a moral thing. It's not a moral thing at all. But different audiences around the world, and different audiences in terms of age group, and different audiences in terms of their culture have different, I use the word sophistication, but it's not a great word. I just mean that some are more literate, or some have a wider body of knowledge of storytelling. I'll give you an example. I was in a village in UP, and after dinner, I was talking, and I was showing something on my laptop, and one of the village aunties, very simple, very lovely, wonderful face. I was doing something, and on the screen on my laptop, somebody in the screen waved to another character, and this auntie, who's very simple, had never seen a Hollywood thing or anything like that in her life, she waved back at the screen. Most pure, innocent, beautiful, emotional response. Now, if I'm doing a storytelling with her, it's a different kind of storytelling, and it will definitely be a much more emotionally rich storytelling than anything Hollywood does. But it also won't be as quote unquote sophisticated. I won't be using, montage cinema and superimposing images on top of each other and flashing back and doing, backstory and, complicated narrative structures, which have an evolution in, say, Western literature, for example, with Russian novels. Russian novels gave birth to a whole new aspect. We have new tools as audiences. And certainly with social media, the audiences, a 20 or 10-year-old kid can look at a meme and see much more than his 40-year-old uncle can. The 40-year-old uncle just looks and sees, oh yeah, got it. And the kid goes, no, uncle, you don't understand. It's referencing this other thing. And that's also referencing, it's a great meme, because he's sophistication in seeing what's happening in that meme is far more than his older generation person who just looks at it and just thinks it's a picture. It's a picture. So you've got depths in terms of the narrative levels. You've got emotional things. You've got interactivity. All the things are. So it's very difficult to talk about advancement of storytelling without talking about audiences. So I'm going to take your question now that I've done 10-minute preamble and say, how are audiences changing and how will advancement of technology do it? And that, wow, if you can, this is a very short answer. If you can figure that out, you are the next Disney of the 21st century, right? Because we don't know what AI is going to do in anything in our lives. I mean, you may not have a job. There's so many aspects that AI, which is AI, artificial intelligence, essentially is doing a couple things that have never been done before. We always, the advancement of technology is always, wow. But this is actually significantly, it's dimensionally different in the sense that there's now a kind of robot-like kind of technology which can make its own decisions. It can learn, you give it something to do, you come back 3 years later, and it has transformed itself into something unrecognizably different. That's not the same as I turn on the on switch, I come back from lunch, and 100 mattresses were stapled or pressed or something, like some mechanical thing. I come back, and this is no longer anything I can recognize. It's learned and adapted like a biological organism almost, and transformed into something else. Now, when you get that in combination with content and storytelling, we have no clue. Honestly, we have no clue. And there is a race going on because stories are used for politics, and there are a number of elections going on this year, and we have already seen there was an example of this. So this is your question is about storytelling and advancement of technology. I'm going to give you a very, I don't want to say sinister, but a very pessimistic example. In the American elections right now, there's a stage called the primaries, which is kind of like the pre-election stage where the parties pick their people before they go for the big race. And during this process where they're picking the race, the parties are picking the people. In the state of New Hampshire audiences who picked up their phone got a voice, which was the voice of President Joseph Biden. Joe Biden is currently the president, but he's running for re-election. And Joe Biden said to them, hey, we've got this locked up, so no need to go vote. Don't worry about it. I've got to. I know the weather is going to be bad on that day, so don't worry. You can take a rest, relax. It's going to be okay. And you go, oh, okay, thank you. And obviously, it's his recorded voice. He's not. The president isn't calling you directly, but the president is telling you, okay, like that. And his voice was authentically his voice, but he didn't say it. If you had taken all the words I just said in my last sentence and you rearranged my words and you put them together, and it was never possible to do this so believably, but you can take in this interview, even the I don't know, 1,000 words I've said, you take it somewhere previously he said prehistoric, somewhere previously he said Mumbai, somewhere previously he said New York. You put that all together and he said, Mumbai is prehistoric to New York. I never said that, but you can take it and you can make things, and it's not detectable, not to the human ear. You literally have to have another computer look at it and go, we caught that it's actually a manipulation. So the advancement of technology is moving way ahead of moving way ahead of a lot of things in society, but certainly moving a lot ahead of our ability to understand stories or detect truth in stories or understand it. And so what's happening is the advancements here are hitting us in a very kind of low level, and we're not able to catch it. Low level meaning a kind of a manipulative level, right? So just to understand, some nefarious person, some evil person created that voice of Joe Biden so that the person would say, oh, okay, I don't need to go in and vote, so that the number of people who go to vote is actually much less for Joseph Biden, and it would help the other parties. And that's very difficult. That's a very, very, very difficult space to regulate. And it's more likely to happen in voice than video, because video is still more complicated. So if you see suddenly something pops out of my head right now, like a little artifact, you'll instantly see, oh, it's a fake video. But in audio, it's much more difficult to catch it. And what happens is people put a little voice note in WhatsApp, and you get forwarded. It gets forwarded to 10,000 people in a chain of people, and you can make anybody say anything. So we're at a very tricky time where the level of audience attention is outgunned by the ability of technology to fool us. And that can be a great thing. That can potentially create amazing entertainment, amazing education. But as usual, the first uses of it tend to be a little bit not great.
So, considering independent films like Pebbles and Shankar's Ferries, they do not penetrate the local audience, but they do make a huge impact in international film festivals.
Yep.
How can the film industry bridge this gap?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I would say not every filmmaker is making an audience for his local audience. They may not want to. They may not care. I would say, I was giving that example previously where something might, whether it's a city or a culture or a movie, might work regionally, local, and then maybe at a national, and then maybe international, right? So if you take that kind of simple framework, a movie like Court, a Marathi movie from, I think it was about 2016, 2014, 16. Wonderful movie. Was a successful Marathi movie. Not particularly successful nationally. I don't think anybody in, I doubt if anybody in, I don't know, Kanpur heard about it. But internationally, it was amazing. It went to Berlin Film Festival, as I recall, and was successful there. So it was this, right? It was like that. Now, if you are making, I don't know, if Shah Rukh Khan is making his next movie, he definitely wants to hit the national. He definitely wants to hit national. And let's say he's making a movie like Dunki, right? So Dunki was Raju Hirani, and it's taking place in Punjab. So they want the Punjabi audience to feel that, yeah, that is really resonates with our experience, and that uncle looks just like our uncle, and all of that, right? And then globally, which they're attempting to do, is it would definitely work with all Indians abroad in terms of diaspora and people who have migrated, but would it work for other people who migrated? I'm a migrant. I think there are some aspects of the movie that are, kind of Indian humor, which can be a little bit over the top. But I love the movie because I understood the story of the migrant. I am a migrant in India. So it wasn't dependent just on being Punjabi or national like that, right? But that was a calculated decision. When they wrote the script, they said, we wanted to work on 3 levels. But your question was, well, okay, something works internationally. How do we get it to work locally? It may not want to. There are movies in famous movies in American history which were complete bomb. They were disasters in America, and the only reason we know about them is because the world audience said, are you crazy? This is a masterpiece, right? Like literally a movie like Citizen Kane, which is generally considered one of the best movies, and usually at the top. It's usually number 1, but certainly the top 5 movies of Western movies of all time. It was a disaster when it came out. That is to say, locally and nationally, nobody, they didn't go for it. They didn't like it. Maybe the marketing, there was some aspects of the commercials which were a factor, but whatever, it didn't work. But internationally, people went, it's amazing. And then later, it goes back, and the national goes, yeah, actually not bad. Actually not bad. So I understand from a producing or a commercial or an economic or a national strategy perspective, geopolitical aspect, you want movies to hit everywhere. But the main thing is really for a movie to work anywhere, right? It worked at one of those 3 levels because it worked, and this is kind of the many people have kind of said this, and I'm just echoing it. A movie has to work for the filmmaker. It has to work for an audience of one. Me. If I'm making it, it works for me. And I'm not changing the movie to make it work for that audience. Not changing it in a way that it doesn't work for me anymore. There's little compromises, like, for example, translation of language or things like that. But generally, I'm making a movie that works for me. And that's why we have such an association with, for example, directors, that we like the director's work. If there's a certain director, Raju Hirani is a great example. I'll watch any movie he makes. Some are better than others, but I know his sensibility, and I know he won't release a movie unless it works for him. And I like him, So I don't need to know who's in it or what's it about. That's good. And then it will find its audience. So you can look from the outside and go, what are the economics of how you make this? And that affects budgets. You can't make a huge budget without having some audience to support it. But in terms of your making of the movie from an artistic perspective, it's got to work for audience of one, and then it may touch on one of the other levels. And I wouldn't even say that you have to try. Take Sholay. Sholay will be a forever movie, even though nobody in America knows about it, let's say, right? Doesn't matter. You don't have to have international. And likewise in any of the other three categories. But it's really tempting to try and do those all three categories. And it is a valid point for countries or regions. UP, for example, is trying to set up a film hub in, was it Ghaziabad or Meerut? Just outside NCR. They want to essentially compete with Mumbai for being a film city. So you can understand that they're looking, we have so many people from UP who go to Mumbai, go to Film City, make movies there. They're making it in Hindi. Why can't we just do that here? If you're doing a geopolitical strategy, you're either the mayor of a city, or you're the minister, or the governor, a state, or a national leader. You may want to incentivize people in certain ways to do those kind of things. But that's a very different kind of conversation than the storytelling first approach.
So, how has the rise of OTT transformed the Indian entertainment industry?
The rise of OTT, these players like Netflix and Amazon, Disney, Hotstar, from the West primarily, players like Z5, Sony, although Sony is a foreign company, Sony Leave Operations is a wonderful example of kind of a domestic understanding of the market, their approach. It's revolutionized. Revolutionized, I don't want to overuse that word. I just want to say there is the industry before OTT and the industry after it are not the same industries. They're just not. And in tons of ways, we all know it. It used to be, before OTT, there was another kind of platform, meaning a way of watching movies, distribution model, which had also a similar impact, which was DVDs, or you have the VCDs. So if I missed a movie in the theater, I could watch it on VCD or DVD, or if I don't want to pay for that, there's some pirated versions or anything like that. But essentially, a new way to watch it without having to wait for it to come on TV. I had this new thing, and I put it into my device, and now I can watch it. That's huge for the industry. So pre-DVD, a movie had to make money from theaters and television, mostly, and regional sales. Then DVDs came, and DVDs were somewhere between 20 to 35% of a movie's overall revenue. So now you can make different kinds of movies because, we don't have to all make big movies. What if it doesn't go in the theater, which is a big, expensive proposition, especially pre-digital, when films were printed? Literally, a can of film was shipped to every theater around. That was very expensive. So maybe there's a small movie, and with DVD, you knew it was going to recover its cost in DVD. So that previous platform, we can learn a lot from that. That changed the industry, changed the kinds of movies that got funded. I would say it even changed acting in the sense of the screen you watch a DVD tended to be a laptop or maybe a home TV. And, if you had a very wide shot on a big screen at the cinema, you could see everything. But now a wide shot, maybe if you're watching this on a phone, and I have a very wide shot, and I'm the size of, here's a little raisin. If I'm this little raisin in the distance, right? On a phone, you can't see who this is, right? But on the big screen, you could go, oh, that's the villain, and he's coming. And there's a very famous shot, if you know David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia, there's a very famous shot where there's something coming at you in the distance. You don't know what it is. You can't see it. The whole shot is just this. The camera is still, and little by little comes in. And on the big screen, at some point, you see, oh my God, there's a guy on a horse and he's coming. He looks evil. He looks dangerous, evil. He's a villain. Oh my God, right? Okay, that works because of the big screen. But if you're watching that on a phone, you would like pause and zoom in. You would go, I can't see it. What kind of stupid filmmaker is it? So it gave rise to more close-up. Literally, filmmaking became more intimate in the sense of we need to see the faces. They need to be bigger on the screen because the screen is smaller. That was DVD. That happened then. OTT, similar thing. It used to be something that if a movie went straight to DVD, it was kind of that phrase straight to DVD meant it's not good enough for cinemas. But if a movie goes straight to OTT now, it doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't good enough for cinemas. It just means it wasn't big enough. They didn't expect it to have a huge box office success. It can be the best movie you saw of the last year. It absolutely could be. It wasn't meant to be seen with 400 other people in the cinemas. So straight to OTT is actually not disrespectful at all, and it's strategic. And I know people who they don't go to cinemas anymore. They just don't. So that wasn't possible. Like, if you said, hey, do you like movies? Even 10 years ago, it meant I went to the cinemas. If you say, do you like movies now? It doesn't necessarily mean that the person goes to PVR. They may not. It's very strange. So anyway, this is it's a world of difference. But I think also the changes it's brought in are already well in place at this point. What's really going to be affecting things now is in the OTT space is probably, and this is my kind of business prediction, but you've just got so many OTT players. Like I don't want to have a subscription to this and this and this and this and this and this. And there's some movie that's playing on, I don't know, on some, I don't want to pick on somebody, but let's just say there's a movie. I had a series, for example, last year come out called Taj. Divided by Blood with Nasruddin Shah was playing Emperor Akbar. And it was a series, not a movie, but it was a series and exclusively on Z5. Now, if you don't have Z5, you have to make a decision. Do I want to see that so much that I'm going to get a subscription to Z5, which is what Z5 wants? Or you go, it's okay. I've got something else. So I think you're going to have some, I don't know, there's just too many OTT players right now because nobody wants to have 10 subscriptions, and nobody does, right? And actually Sony Live and Z5 had very publicly announced that they were going to merge. I think that has fallen through. Who knows? I think the immediate consequences of OTT, we know. I've talked about them in terms of kind of cinema, the kind of viewing habits people have. People binge watch an entire thing over a weekend. That means they're literally watching like 8 hours. If you told somebody, hey, let's watch 4 movies today, people will go, okay, I like movies, but I'm not going to watch 4 movies today. You say, let's binge watch something, and somehow they do, right? So all kinds of viewing habits have changed. But after all that behavioral change, now some economic things factor in, which is to say, even in Hollywood, all those studios are now competing with or working with. It's kind of a weird relationship, that phrase, co-opetition. You're cooperating, but you're also competing with the big silicon companies. So, Apple has Apple TV, which is directly competing with Disney. Apple is not a Hollywood studio. So if you look at the 6, 7, 8 studios in Hollywood, you now have new players, which are Silicon Valley players. You also have, players from around the world, BBC or Canal Plus, like I said, there's too many. So there will probably be a reckoning in which there's some kind of merging. And it may not be traditional merging where 2 Hollywood companies get together, or even, Z5 and Sony Live. It may be that Z5 says, okay, the merger with Sony Live didn't work out. We're now going to merge with, Flipkart. Who saw that coming? But something like that will happen. So there will be this kind of change. But it's been a huge change, to answer your question.
In your documentary Breaking into Bollywood, you've described both India and the US as your homes. So what aspects of Mumbai really resonated with you?
I think a lot of foreigners, or let's say expats or migrants, in general, you know, they carry a little bit of where they left. They carry that a little bit of that in their heart wherever they go. And so the question is a kind of a balance. Are they mostly still back there in their heart and they're just kind of visiting here? Or have they've come and there's still some of that there, but they're here now. And, you know, for most of human history, a migrant like me went in one direction. More often than not to the New World, right? America is literally a country of immigrants. But the point is, you know, the Italians who left Italy or the Irish people who left Ireland, they went and found a new home in America, and they carried a little bit of Ireland in their heart. But they made America their home. But if you ask them, that aspect that they carried a little bit of Ireland in their heart means that, yeah, Ireland is still home, but it clearly isn't. Even if their children have never even been to Ireland and they don't even identify with that. They don't even speak, let's say, the mother tongue, right? So maybe maybe an NRI population goes to America and they speak, you know, they speak the regional language and they learn English or whatever. Their children now speak American English with an American accent, and their Hindi sounds very NRI-like. But the grandchildren, not clear if they're going to keep up the Indian language. They made America their home, right? So there's a kind of a balanced thing. Throughout human history, this has always been true. But there's two things that are a little bit different in my case, and without talking about me specifically. So three things. There's migration has become two-way. It's not just one way, right? Before the advent of airplanes and jets, it was you took a ship, you went for 8 weeks, you landed on the shores of Ellis Island. That's it. You're not going back to Italy or Ireland or Russia or wherever you came from. You're gone. One way. That's it. Now with planes and particularly the cost of flying and just globalization, you know, it used to be you had one career in your life, meaning you worked with one company for your entire life. And now if you, you know, talk to some 20 or 25-year-old, they probably think that they'll work with maybe, you know, 7 to 10 companies over the course of their life. And that's probably true with countries too. Maybe not 10 countries, but it's unlikely that the future generations will live and work in just one country, the way it's been for most of human history. In most of human history, again, at most, it was 2. So everybody worked in one country, except for this little group of people called migrants. They worked in 2. They were here, they went there, that's it. Only the people who went 3 were like gypsies, and that was very suspicious, yeah? But now, if you take a 20-year-old, 22-year-old, 25-year-old coming, let's say, out of his MBA, if I had to guess, he probably is going to live and work in 5 countries in his life. Yeah? Or even in India, 5 regions. Maybe he gets his MBA in Delhi, then he goes down to Mumbai for his first job. He's middle manager, he goes down to Bangalore, and then he becomes the head of operations for the country based in Hyderabad. Something like that is much more common. So that's true for me too. Like I've traveled around the world globally, but coming to India was on one level just another country. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is that's a little bit different in my case is that when you come to India, it's actually not just another country. Because when you migrate to other countries, if I go to Spain, I'm getting the Spanish experience. If I go to Japan, it's the Japanese experience. But when I come to India, I obviously get the Indian experience, or I get the regional thing in terms of like if you show up in Calcutta, Kolkata, you show up in Delhi, you show up in Goa. These are all going to be different flavors of the Indian experience, yes? But also, India is the world's repository. That I will find in India everything that has ever come to India. Everything that's ever come to India still stays in India through history. I'll give it. I may sound very esoteric. Let me give you a couple quick examples. Alexander the Great comes to the Northwest Territory, gets pretty far. Some point he gets turned back and all that. But with him, he brings Greek doctors. That Greek form of medicine is called Unani medicine. Unani medicine to this day is obsolete. It is, you know, 2,500 years, 2,400, 300, 400 years old. Why would it? It's only alive in Greece and India. And India. Anything that comes to India stays. It takes root and it becomes Indian in the process. Potatoes are not from India. Potatoes were imported, I believe, by the Portuguese. And, you know, so some Jesuit father had a garden and he was planting potatoes. And the other people in India thought this is pretty good, and now you've got, aloo something or whatever, and you've made it like that. And so in India, it's not just like going to any other country, right? It is in the sense that I said, like, from a migration thing, you're going to hit 5 countries in your life, boom, 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 boom. But when you hit India, now you've got another element, which is that you're actually touching something which touches all of humanity. If I go to I don't know, Japan, I'm unlikely to find a Hindu shrine. But if I go to India, I am very likely to find Buddhist practice, right? There are countries where there are no churches, but in India, there's churches. There's everything that's ever existed as some things, right? Populations of Jews, or even things like, even not, I don't want to go too far on this, but even not just religions, but political things. Like communism has failed in the Soviet Union, but it's still alive and well in India, right? There's a couple of states. So when something comes here, there's some population that holds on to it and preserves it. And in that sense, India is the repository of the world. So when I say I'm home in India, I don't mean that I have an Aadhaar card, that I do what I do, or I pay taxes here, I do. I mean that I feel at home. A lot of Indians interpret that as, oh, he must have been reincarnated. He used to be here in his previous life. Who knows? But it also means I am constantly seeing things that resonate with me in ways I didn't even I might not recognize. Like I see some architecture and I go, that's oddly familiar. And I'm not even consciously aware that when I was 15 years old, I lived in a country there where Art Deco was going on. I didn't even know what Art Deco is, and it reminds me of when I was 15. That's not going to happen in other places around the world. So those are the two things. Migration is happening more often. So you can have, I am home at America, I am home in India, but India is also special. So everybody can feel at home in India, not that they do. Some people have an allergic reaction to India. Like it's too hot, it's too spicy, it's too something. I don't mean that in any moral sense. You're not a good person or a bad person if you don't like spicy food. I'm not trying to say, I'm just saying it's not for everybody. But if it is for your liking, then you will increasingly find the longer you stay here, more depth of the reminders of the rest of humanity. You'll find the clues of them here. So those are the two things. And the third thing then is, why is it home? Well, because of the Zach factor, in my case. Home is where your heart is. So home is here. But home is also there, but home is here. And you know what? That's a contradiction. And in a lot of countries in the world, they would say, no, choose. But India understands contradiction. And anybody who's watching this who's not Indian, I don't think you're going to understand what I'm saying. But Indian understands, lives with, masters, is both blessed with and cursed with contradictions all day, every day. And it's the beauty of India, but it can be maddening. But that's how, if I say, yeah, America's home and India's home, I know my Indian audience will understand. Maybe the others won't.
You've worked with so many Bollywood A-listers, like Shah Rukh Khan, Akshay Kumar. Just any fun experiences or any memorable sequences in films that you've had with any one of them?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, because you said Shah Rukh Khan, I mentioned Shah Rukh Khan. And the reason I'll tell this little story, I mean, obviously, if you have a story with Shah Rukh Khan, you tell that story. But it's also a story that nobody's going to know. Like literally nobody would know this unless you kind of lived it and experienced it. So I have to take you back to a movie called Fan, which, God, I think it released in 2016, maybe 2017, somewhere around there. And I was cast to be a jail inmate with Shah Rukh Khan. And I just very briefly give you the context for this because it's everything for the story. In the movie, there's a series of events which things don't go well for him. And it kind of like the ultimate thing is at some point he just gets thrown in jail. He's innocent, but he gets thrown in jail for a night. And this is taking place in London. In terms of storytelling, you want to make that a really awful experience. Like not just is he thrown in jail, but it's like awful. And so the casting or the directing or whatever, when they thought, how do we make this as awful as possible? They thought, oh yeah, bring in Zach. So, yeah, I will be his inmate with him in the cell. And the point of the scene was that I should be the kind of inmate who wants to pick a fight. Yeah. Shah Rukh Khan is a little shorter than me, I suppose, and being a Western arrogant inmate in jail, I think, yeah, who's in pick a fight with him. And the reason, okay, so that's the context. The reason I mention this is because the movie that came out, this scene got censored. It doesn't show up. You won't see it in the movie. It got cut. I believe Yuvraj, the studio, took the scene and released it on their YouTube channel. They released a few scenes that were either cut or censored, and this is there. So if you want to YouTube and search for Yuvraj fan deleted scenes, Zachary Coffin, something like that, you'll find the scene I'm talking about. But if you watch the movie, you'll go, what is the scene? It didn't happen. It didn't happen. It got cut. What happens in the movie is you see him thrown in jail, and he looks and he goes, oh, it's like bad. It looks like it's going to be a bad night. Cut to the next morning, somebody releases him, gets him out of jail, and that's it. So the storytelling is, oh my God, the worst point is he's thrown in jail. Next morning, he's taken out. The scene was originally supposed to be, it gets worse. He gets into a fight. And the fight was, I started picking on a fight. I started hurling a lot of racial abuses at Shah Rukh Khan. I shouldn't say the things I say. And that's why the scene got censored. We were just improvising. They just said, just say every nasty thing you can. So I said a lot of nasty things to Shah Rukh Khan because, I'm supposed to be like a real bad, yucky person. And I'm also trying to provoke him to fight. I'm just trying to just get him like that. So I said a lot of things, racial and all kinds of stuff, which disclaimer. But and it was so bad that the censor board said this scene cannot be cut the scene. It was that bad in terms of the abuses I was hurling. So I'm abusing, and Shah Rukh Khan's character's like, just let me be. But then I start getting a little touchy. I start like poking and pushing like that. Hit. Okay. Now I'm not doing it by myself. I'm doing it with another jail inmate of mine, and that jail inmate is like he's a Nordic guy. He's about 6 foot, I don't know, but he's 6 foot something. He's taller than me, and he's more brusty. And in real life, this guy actually knew Taekwondo, which is one of the martial arts. And he's not an actor, but he wanted to show off how well he knew martial arts. He's like, yeah, okay. When it comes time to do this, I can really do it well. And we're like, okay, but there's also acting, okay? Like that. So what happened is, at some point, I do this thing with Shah Rukh Khan, and like I push him, hit him, and what's going to happen is that the other guy is going to come and do an undercut, and hit him. Now let's stand up here. He's going to go boom, and Shah Rukh Khan is going to go, it's like this, and then Shah Rukh Khan is go wham, right? Okay, so the choreography is very simple. It's like I provoke, my friend comes in and hits him, right? Shah Rukh Khan does an uppercut to me and hits him off like that. Okay, now this is make believe, right? We're just trying to. We're not actually fighting. We're just choreographing the scene. And this was the beginning of what was going to be a 3-minute fight scene. I actually, I suppose the highlight of my life is I had a fight scene with Shah Rukh Khan, which nobody has seen. But anyway, so here's what happens. I do this, and I'm going. My lighting's all weird, but I'm like this, and I go, Shah Rukh Khan, yeah, and then my friend goes, yeah, you, right, and Shah Rukh Khan goes, oh. And the guy, because he wasn't an actor, like if I do this, I know I have enough training that I know I'm not going to hit the camera. That is a small little technical thing in acting, like knowing how to throw a punch without actually hitting the guy. But this guy who knew Taekwondo was too enthusiastic. He was just very eager to show how good of a punch he could do, that he didn't get the concept that it shouldn't really actually make contact. And he hit that part of you that like you suddenly get winded. So this is how he gets boom, and so we're expecting boom, oh yeah, boom, boom. Instead it's boom, oh, oh. And Shah Rukh Khan he does a couple, like fall on the ground, but he goes like this and he starts, he goes like, he starts walking off like this. And I'm telling you, this is a moment I can never forget. The entire set froze like nothing you've ever seen. The star has been actually defenseless. Like he knows he can. It's not like it's. I mean, I think Shah Rukh Khan can take a punch, but he wasn't expecting to get punched, right? And to get this winded and all that. And he's just coming off stage like this. And I swear to God, my friend, who's already white, like a ghost, like the blood just left his face. And everybody turns and looks at him. What did you do? What did you do? Oh my God! Do we have a movie now? Because Shah Rukh Khan, did he break his rib? Did he what like that? And Shah Rukh Khan goes off for about 10 minutes, and he's okay. He just got winded. He get that part of the kind of solar plexus where it like it spasms your thing like that. And Shah Rukh Khan is in phenomenal shape. He's phenomenal shape. He's really the rest of the fight scene is like that. But you get a guy at that moment off, right, and bam. And so he comes back and he says, "Okay, you don't throw punches. We're going to do this thing. We're going to keep going." And we ended up doing a whole fight scene on this one. But I'll never forget this guy. He wasn't allowed to throw any more punches on the show that day. And we ended up doing this thing. I got a couple good punches in. Shah Rukh Khan does this thing where he throws his legs up and his legs go around my neck and like all this kind of stuff. And you'll never see it. It got cut out of the movie. But it was a great experience working with Shah Rukh Khan. You can look at the YouTube. Hopefully you see the video. And it was a great experience because utter professional. Like, I'm not trying to suck up to him or flatter him or something like that. But I know people who are A-listers or stars who are all personality. They're all bravado. And of course, Shah Rukh Khan is charm. But he is a precise professional. And that's why this moment a moment of imprecision, which caused injury, was such a sin. It's just not done. Like, if you're going to make a mistake, err on the side of not. But anyway, that is it's a scene which nobody has seen. So I have to explain the scene before I can even talk about the scene. But yeah, good experience. And Shah Rukh Khan said something afterwards on Twitter to me. He's such a gracious person. I was just saying on Twitter, thank you for this. I was thanking the director, Mini Sharma, and Shah Rukh Khan retweeted my tweet saying, listen, I'm going to repeat his words because, of course, I am. But it's, the grace of this is amazing. He said, "Thank you, like Zach. I learned so much working with you." And I was like, that's you like this kind of moment like that, really? Because and this isn't a scene nobody's even seen. This is a scene that nobody's seen. Anyway, that's very good, and it's something true. The really classy stars, not just Hollywood or Bollywood, but anywhere in life, and not just in films, but in any domain. The guys who are Nobel laureates, your real, your top excellent people in the world, they have class. They understand grace. They understand something. There are plenty of very successful people who don't have grace, who are not very classy, and are ambitious as hell, and are successful. But then there's a level above them. So I was very pleased by that chance to work.
Thank you so much, Zach. That was great stuff. It was such nice connecting with you again.
Thanks, Yuvraj.